So DTF, it stands for direct to film. This is a transfer technique where you print directly onto a special film and then you can apply it with heat to your actual fabric. It's used mainly with t-shirt printing, but they also use it with skateboards. So I thought, well, why can't we do that? Why can't we DTF or direct to film transfer onto our guitar bodies? Let's see if it works. So the next thing we need to do is make a design. Now I sort of covered this in a last video when I was laser engraving tele bodies on the X-Tool S1, but now we're gonna do full color. So let's get to the design process and then we'll get back to the shop. So I was first inspired by these Patrick Nagel BC Riches. These were guitars that came out in the early 80s and they had this pop art style graphic on them and they're just incredible. So I wanted to do something inspired by that. So of course, if I need very quick art, I'll go straight to AI. In this case, I'm using Midjourney. And Midjourney is gonna allow me to really express what I'm looking for and even name drop Patrick Nagel to inspire the AI to dream up art like that. So it was essentially just hours and hours of playing with the AI and directing it to give me exactly what I needed for this project. So now we're going to move into Affinity Designer, and this is the same app I used when I built the laser engraving art for the last project. In this case, we're doing the same thing. We're using a tele mask. This mask essentially shows us the outline as well as where all the cavities are located. So we know that we can actually place our artwork exactly where we need it. So these are the artworks that I landed on. And what's important to note is I'm almost breaking up the Telecaster in half. So there's a very colorful portion on the top, and then there's the actual illustration on the bottom. So let's take a look at a couple of these that I landed on. This one here has this salmon color at the top. We have that kind of pale blue where the illustration takes up a huge portion of the guitar. And then we have one where the illustration character is actually looking right at you. Another one where it's sort of reversed and we have this idea of the blue at the back, which didn't quite work. One where, again, we have a straight profile, and this one also I didn't think worked really well. But it is kind of cool because it does have a lot of interesting design elements at the top. Another kind of bubblegum one. Another one that didn't quite work because the bridge is basically securing the mouth. This one came out pretty good, and it really came down to like what the AI was doing and where I can place this proportionately without the cavities obstructing the main portions. This one is actually pretty brilliant. I believe this is one I landed on. Another really good one that's really reminiscent of the Patrick Nagel guitars. So these are essentially the ones that I ended up landing on. So then it's simply just a matter of hiding the mask, turning off the calves, getting us back to the original rectangle shape, and then exporting this. That way we can upscale it where we send it to the printer. So this is the AI upscaler that I used. It's called upscale.media. There are a dime a dozen. They're all over the internet. They all have different features, different prices. I didn't pay a dime for this. I just used the free version. And I was able to upscale up to 4x for free. So you can take a look at these upscaled images, and it really does not only upscale, but the AI is also using its AI to clean it up. Just can't complain with how well this upscaler did. We have our images, now let's send them off to get printed. So I ended up choosing Ninja Transfers for my DTF printing. They have awesome prices. They also print large format, and they needed that. That's it. I hit send, I paid, and all we have to do now is wait for them to come. So we're gonna be printing on these tele bodies. I have 2 of them, so this is gonna give us a little bit of room for experimentation. Now these are unsealed raw wood tele bodies. They haven't been painted, primed, and they've only been sanded down to 220. There is a bit of raised grain on there. I could wet it and remove it, but I'm not going to. We're not gonna worry about the pores, and we're not gonna worry about the grain, and we're not gonna worry about the variation in color either, because there are some dark browns, some really light hues, etc. This is all an experiment. I don't know what's gonna work. I don't know if it's gonna fail or succeed. We're gonna find out together. All right, I got back my prints. This is from Ninja Transfers, and they came in this really cool triangle box. I assume that they are rolled, so we may have to unroll these and let them flatten out. I don't know. But let's go ahead and unbox this and see how they came out, because I'm super excited to see how they came out. How does this open? Sweet. Be really delicate here. It's a very small piece of tape. Hope they got me two. Oh, there are the two. Wow. So it's actually not curling up as much as I thought it would. It came out awesome. Perfect size too. Perfect size. All right, these look really great. Full color. It has that really great brightness that I was looking for. Bright golden hair, bright blue eyes, bright reds, and that really cool pale blue. And then for the other one, it has the kind of contrast I was looking for, where you have the swirly black over the red for the hair, and then you have those really kind of piercing gray-green eyes. The makeup around the eye really came out well. So I love the details. You can see the eyelashes, all the design inside the eyeballs. And so I'm glad I went with this method instead of creating this into vectors, which is typically what you want to do. All I did was upscale the actual graphic and it came out really well. So even some of the details in the lips and the teeth, really great. Everything just came out awesome. So now comes the bit where we need to experiment a little bit. And that's why we printed two. So here comes the portion of this process where we need to press the film onto the bodies. And we're going to be using quite a large press to press. Now, I printed these out in basically rectangles that are the exact dimensions of the telly. So if we press that full rectangle on here, it's going to have edges where it's not pressing, where the heat's not releasing the actual ink onto the body. And I don't know how that's going to look. So my thought process was, well, let's do two. Let's do one where we print that rectangle onto the body and then we trim after the fact. Now, what could happen is, because of the roundovers, we could get an ugly edge on the body. The second method would be to get the film and cut it out before we press it. So use a template for a telly, use a scalpel, and cut out the outline, and maybe even make it undersized by like 1 millimeter or 2, and then just press that onto the body. So essentially we're avoiding the roundover. That might come out cleaner, but I don't know. We're gonna experiment, we're gonna try both methods. All right, so I have this old Telecaster template from way back in the day. I don't use templates anymore, but I still have this one laying around. It is clear acrylic, so I'll be able to see through it. And I have my cutting mat. So what we're gonna do is get a nice, fresh X-Acto blade, and we're going to trace out and cut the DTF film so that it at least matches this, and then we'll do a second pass where we go kind of like a little bit under so that we don't go around that bevel. So typically, I guess if you'd wanted to do this properly, you'd want to print on a body that does not have the roundover. That would be ideal. So the really cool thing about Ninja transfers is that you can actually request free samples, which is what I did before I made my purchase. So I'll show you the samples. They look something like this. And so it's full color, and you can actually cut these with scissors if you need to, and all of this will print in the text, so you can see how fine and detailed even like text will print onto your fabric or wood. Here's some more DTF transfers of some little characters. So this is a great way to practice on your material without having to commit to a purchase. And this is exactly what I did before I bought my big prints. So what does it look like? Well, it came out pretty good. I did a couple of tests and it came out pretty darn awesome. In particular, one here. What impresses me the most is the detail. So you'll notice they have all those little dots. Those things are tiny, very tiny, and the detail came out extraordinary, including the little detail under the stars, those little arrows, and the text is crisp. So there's so much potential with these DTF transfers. You could do like logos, you could do text, you could do full color printing, which came out really, really nice. And then here was the first test I did where I was like adding too much heat, too much time, and it really kind of just blew it up. So let's do a test here since this is already kind of gross. Let's see if we can scratch it. So I have my fingernail here. It's on there really good. Let's try again here with the rainbow here. We'll do the blue. And then we'll get something a little bit harder. So we'll just get something like this ruler, and I'll just try to. See? It takes something really abrasive to take that ink out of the wood. Not bad. So obviously, if you do something like this and you seal it, again, it's not embossed, it's like flat. You got something really cool. They've been doing this for skateboards for decades. We know it works. They've been printing on maple veneers and it just works. And obviously when you start grinding away, that's what happens to your graphics on your skateboard. But even that looks pretty cool. All relic and worn out. I don't know, there's a lot of ideas here. Just so many ideas, like crazy. So all really it comes down to is just finding an image you want on your guitar and printing directly onto it. See, this proves it. This works, but can we print large scale? That's the question. And that's what we're gonna do next. All right, so this is the heat press. It's a portable heat press. So I bought the least expensive heat press that you can find on Amazon. I could have gone with a really good name brand that's almost like twice or 3 times as expensive, but this one was fairly cheap. And since it's only going to be doing one job, I thought it would do the trick, but we'll find out, right? So it occurred to me that I should probably test this. So I have one of the cutoffs. I'm going to test this. It's the smart thing to do. I'm just going to put it right there, and then I'm going to test this sucker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I know this worked because, well, the wood is hot everywhere. And then I see this, essentially, it's kind of like a moisture line here. Oh, shoot. God damn. Thing just burnt on me. And it's still smoking. So, you know, the funny thing is I read this in the review. Someone laid down the heat press onto the cord and it shorted out. And that's what happened here. I put the heat press essentially back onto the bed, but there's a corner of the cable still under there, and it basically sparked, shorted out, which is a shame. So my fault there. I'm like filming, trying to do everything at once, and I didn't catch that. So I tried these two methods, and because there was a round over in these bodies, what I did was I took the actual film and I cut it inside the round over so that it would be a flat surface for it to adhere to. And this seems to be the way to do it. I experimented with kind of coming inside the edge of the route as well. So keep in mind there's going to be a bridge plate on here, so you'll never see this edge, but I experimented to see how it would react if I went just slightly under, and this worked out pretty good, but then I tried another method. In this method, I basically put the film on over the route and then cut it out, and then just kind of pushed it in with my finger, right? So it goes over, and you can see the film is going inside the route, so it's almost like it's overlapping that edge and going in. What I did was I heated up a dowel on the craft iron, and I just kind of got those little corners and all the edges, and that seemed to make it stick. So it's stuck inside the wood there. Now it's a gross edge, but you're not going to see this. Like, that's going to be completely covered by your bridge and your pickup. Same thing with the edge here for the cavity. So it's going inside the route, so it's overlapped in. I haven't cut out that route yet. The other thing I learned is that you'll get a really smooth finish unless you go overboard the heat, which is what I did. So take a look at the lips here. It's all perfect, super smooth and flat. But if you are a little bit insecure and you use the heat too much, like I did, then you start getting wrinkles. These wrinkles are from just excess heat sort of melting that film. And this one I was less worried, and this one came out really smooth everywhere. So very smooth along the features where you want it to be smooth. And I don't think I got many wrinkles on this one. I think it was a good test. Like, considering that I didn't know what I was doing, I've never done this before, I don't think anyone in the world has, it was a good test. I learned a lot. And I think the third one I make is going to be superb. So I'm going to work on something that's a little bit more similar to the laser engraved stuff I did, where you're not completely covering the body, you're just basically making a design within it with a lot of transparency. So I think that's what I might do for my next steps. A clear pickguard would look really cool, maybe? I don't know. A lot of good stuff. So this was a fun experiment. And that's all it was, an experiment. I had no idea if it would work or if it would work well. And I got the whole idea from skateboards. And skateboard manufacturing has always used some form of sublimation, or DTF these days. So this was the first one I did. And what I decided to do was undercut the film so that it was underneath the bevel. I didn't cut out the neck pickup cavity. It's basically the film's over it. And I thought this was a kind of a cool look because it gives someone the opportunity to use like a clear pickguard and choose if they want to like keep the graphic or cut out the graphic and install a pickup on there. But this worked out pretty good. And I'm happy with this one. But here's some of the things that I learned. You don't need a lot of pressure and you don't need a lot of heat. So having that big heat press, I don't think that was necessary. I could have gotten away with my tiny little craft iron. Also, that heat press was too hot. You want to be around the 290 or 270 mark in Fahrenheit. And you don't need a lot of time either. And so I was spending like 10 seconds overlapping more seconds every time I had to overlap with the heat press. And I think that kind of ruined the film. The film will bubble. It'll bubble if you add too much heat for too long. I think this has a lot of potential, not just a potential for full 4-color graphics, but for basically transparency too. So the way that skateboards are made, the graphic has got a lot of transparency in it. And I should have done that. I wish I had gone more transparent route. This was my second test, and this one came out pretty good too. And with that crafting iron, the small crafting iron, I was able to basically get around that bevel and make it adhere and stick underneath the bevel onto the side, and it worked out really well. And with this method, I actually cut out the cavity for the bridge pickup and the control cavity, and I was able to overlap the film and use a little bit of heat to make it stick underneath. So this method works. So it's really hard to kind of predict where your pockets are, this method. It's so much easier to just cut them out after the fact and then roll the film into the cavity. So this one came out really well too. Pretty sick. Pretty cool. Just something different. You know, it's just different. It's not the new way to finish a guitar. It's just something different, and there's potential. And so I hope everybody can see that potential. I did a poor job, probably. I could definitely do better, and I have a lot of ideas brewing where I want to do something a little bit more like this, something with transparency, even something with transparency and overlapping. So the cool thing is you have like overlapped graphics here. And you can do that in pre-production in your design application, but you could also do it post. So you can actually add a layer, then add a layer on top. That's got potential. So a lot of the DTF tutorials on YouTube tell you that after you peel your film off, to actually place your parchment paper back on and then do another heat press. I don't recommend that. It's that made this bubble up. It was the extra heat with the parchment paper that sort of melted the film in a lot of places. So don't do that. It doesn't need a lot of time. You basically press it for 7 seconds. You just need a crafting iron, let it cool, peel, and then stop. Then you can get to the cavities and start cutting those out. So these were great fun weekend projects. Didn't spend a lot of time in the design process. I let the AI do the bulk of that work for me. What I did was I used my design aesthetic to choose the right images, place them correctly, and then basically set them off to get printing. Once they got here, it was a morning job. I love these finishes that take one morning to do. Pressing, cutting, cleanup, all in one morning. This may not be the best finish, but it's definitely an alternative. Thanks for watching. Take it easy.